You were taught to tell the truth, to speak your heart, to let it all out. Because being honest is being good. Being honest is being free. Being honest is being safe. But what if it's not? What if your honesty is the very thing that keeps making you bleed? In a world where masks are worn like armor, where everyone hides their fear behind charm, where people smile while calculating where to cut, showing everything makes you vulnerable. And in the wrong room, vulnerability is suicide. Machiavelli didn't just talk about politics. He talked about survival, about power, about the games we pretend we're not playing, even inside love, even inside friendship, even inside ourselves. Radical honesty sounds noble, but nobility gets devoured, and the lamb who speaks too much feeds the wolves. This is not a call to become fake. It's a warning. Even truth needs strategy. Because once they know where you hurt, they know where to strike. They told you to be real, to speak your truth, to never hold back, as if raw transparency is always a virtue, no matter the cost. But what if that's not honesty? What if that's just exposure? There's a difference between being truthful and being unfiltered. One comes from clarity, the other from desperation. Sometimes we overshare, not because we're brave, but because we're aching to be seen. We mistake emotional bleeding for connection. We pour everything out, hoping someone will hold it. But people don't hold truth like that. They hold it like ammunition. Because the moment you show everything, you stop being a mystery, you become a map. And someone, somewhere, is already tracing the route to your softest point. They told you to hide is lying, but Machiavelli would say, revealing too much is surrender. Radical honesty sounds like freedom, but sometimes it's just you building your own trap, one confession at a time. Because not everyone hears your truth as truth. Some hear it as leverage, as weakness, as access. We think honesty earns respect, but in reality, it often triggers discomfort, judgment, envy, or worse, control. You tell someone you're afraid of being abandoned, they know how to keep you begging to stay. You say you struggle with guilt, now they know how to silence you. You admit you feel too much, now they get to call you too sensitive every time you speak up. Honesty opens the door, but it also opens the wound. Ask yourself, who benefits when you're radically honest? It's rarely you, because in most dynamics, full transparency isn't mutual, it's extracted. They want you honest. They want you raw. They want your history, your fears, your trauma, so they can define you by it. You think you're bonding, but what's actually happening is a silent power shift. You reveal, they observe. You confess, they calculate. And you walk away feeling closer, while they walk away holding your code. There's a reason radical honesty is trendy. It sells. The more vulnerable you are, the more real you appear. The more content you share, the more relatable you seem. And the more relatable you seem, the more valuable you become. People don't just consume your truth, they monetize it, they feed on it, they weaponize it. This doesn't mean you should never open up, but don't confuse openness with integrity. And don't confuse visibility with safety. Because in a world addicted to content, your truth is no longer sacred, it's just data. Machiavelli didn't say, never tell the truth. He said, never tell it all. He understood something we forget, that truth, without timing, without discretion, isn't bravery, it's betrayal of yourself. The goal is not to become fake, it's to become precise, to know who earns your truth, to recognize when honesty heals and when it exposes you to wolves, because there is no virtue in being devoured. There's something unsettling about someone who doesn't say much, who doesn't tell you everything, who listens more than they speak. They make you wonder, and wondering is power. Because what we can't fully see, we imagine. And what we imagine, we fill with meaning, projections, fears, fantasies. Mystery doesn't confuse people. It engages them. It keeps their mind circling, searching, creating. That's why silence is not emptiness, it's control. Not explaining everything is not being distant. It's being sovereign. It's knowing that clarity about yourself doesn't mean constant exposure. Machiavelli knew this. He understood that the more people know about you, the less they respect you. Not because truth is shameful, but because mystery protects your center. And without a protected center, you're just another open book anyone can rewrite. We live in an era obsessed with oversharing, where not telling someone your every emotion is seen as dishonesty, where communication means immediate confession, where every unspoken feeling is treated like betrayal. But mystery is not manipulation, it's protection. It's holding your truth with precision, not offering it to anyone who asks. It's knowing the value of what you carry and refusing to put it on clearance. Look at nature. The most powerful creatures don't announce themselves. They don't roar before they strike. They don't tell the jungle what they feel. They move in silence, with direction, with presence. And when they speak, it matters. Now look at the people who constantly explain themselves, who feel the need to share everything, who write paragraphs trying to be understood. They don't sound strong. They sound desperate. Because they're not trying to connect. They're trying to be rescued. And the harsh truth is, mystery attracts. Desperation repels. You don't need to disappear. You just need to stop leaking. Not every emotion has to be revealed. Not every thought has to be voiced. Not every fear deserves a listener. You are not lying when you withhold. You are protecting when you choose when and who to speak to. Because let's be honest, the people who say they want you open rarely know what to do with your truth once you give it to them. They ask for vulnerability, then flinch when it's real. Or worse, they store it for later, to use it. Mystery is not coldness, it's depth. It's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need to prove themselves, who doesn't need to announce every wound to be taken seriously, who understands that being known is not the same as being safe. Machiavelli believed that power is sustained not through force, but through perception. And perception is shaped by what you choose not to reveal. If they don't know what you're thinking, they can't predict you. If they can't predict you, they can't trap you. And if they can't trap you, they'll have to respect you. So no, you don't owe anyone your full story. You don't need to unpack every scar on command. You don't have to explain your silence to those who never understood your voice. Let them wonder. Let them assume. Let them fill in the blanks with whatever version of you they need. You're not here to correct their imagination. You're here to protect your reality. Because mystery isn't a mask. It's a boundary. It's not hiding who you are. It's preserving who you are from those who only want to dissect it. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing.
Not everyone who asks you to open up wants to understand you. Some just want access. And not everyone who comforts you cares about you. Some just want control. We like to believe that if someone invites our truth, it's because they're safe, because they'll hold it gently, because they'll help us heal. But the truth is, some people collect your vulnerability the way hunters track footprints, smiling, listening, waiting. They'll ask how you feel, but only to map how you break. They'll offer their shoulder, but only so you'll lean on them until you're dependent. They don't come with claws. They come with calm voices, soft eyes, phrases like, "You can tell me anything. It's okay to cry. Don't hold it in." And maybe they mean it, until you give them something real, until the honesty turns ugly, until your trauma isn't poetic anymore, until your need becomes inconvenient. Then the tone shifts. Then the silence grows. Then your truth becomes something used against you, directly or quietly, now or later. These are not villains in dark coats. They are wolves in the skin of healers. They'll tell you they love your depth, then punish you every time you drown. And the more honest you are, the more you bleed, because you're handing knives to people who smile while holding them. You think you're being seen, but what's actually happening is inventory. You're giving them a manual of your emotions and assuming they won't read it like a blueprint for control. Machiavelli warned us, those who seem most virtuous are often the most dangerous. Not because they lie, but because they know exactly what truths to invite. It's not about what they say, it's about what they do after you speak. Do they make space for your truth, or do they use it to shape your behavior? Do they comfort your wounds, or do they remember exactly where to press next time? Sometimes the ones who say, "I'm here for you," are just preparing a seat for your surrender. And the worst part? You won't even notice because it feels like love. That's the trap, being emotionally invaded under the illusion of intimacy. You'll confuse emotional surveillance with connection. You'll think compliance is closeness. You'll say, "They know everything about me." But the real question is, why do they want to? It's easy to see betrayal when it comes from enemies. It's much harder when it wears concern, when it holds your hand, when it says the right things, when it looks like care. But don't be fooled by the softness. Real safety isn't what they say when you cry. It's how they treat you when you stop crying, when you set a boundary, when you disagree, when you stop being easy to console. Because that's when the mask slips. That's when the wolf shows its teeth. Not by attacking, but by withdrawing the affection you were trained to rely on. Machiavelli understood this dynamic deeply. He saw that power isn't just taken, it's given. And we give it away every time we hand over our truth to someone just because they asked nicely. So be careful with those who claim to understand you, not because they're all wolves, but because some are, and you won't know which is which until it's too late.
There's a reason you feel drained after telling your truth. It's not just emotional release, it's exposure, it's loss of mystery, of leverage, of control. Honesty is powerful, but power, when given recklessly, becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. Some people don't want the real you. They want access to you, to your patterns, to your guilt, to your fears, so they can shape your behavior without ever asking directly. You tell them you're afraid of being abandoned? Now they don't need to threaten to leave. They just need to pause long enough and watch you come crawling. You tell them you need to be heard. Now they know silence hurts you more than any insult. So they use it, casually, strategically. And you think you're being authentic, but you're actually negotiating with ghosts, giving pieces of yourself to people who were never supposed to carry them. That's the cost. Not just embarrassment, not just regret, but a slow erosion of your sovereignty. You lose the ability to hold your own emotions without handing them over. You start believing that honesty equals closeness, even when that closeness is toxic. You measure your worth by how understood you are, not by how protected you feel. And little by little, your identity becomes public property. Your emotions become performance. Your inner world becomes content. You become known, but not safe. And here's the darkest part. The more you tell, the more you have to keep telling. Because now they expect it. Now your value is tied to your openness. Now your silence feels like abandonment. You're no longer speaking your truth. You're feeding a cycle, one where your pain becomes your personality and your honesty becomes your obligation. You used to speak to feel lighter. Now you speak and feel emptier, as if every truth leaves you more exposed, more transparent, more invisible. You don't even know who you are without explaining yourself anymore. You enter rooms already pre-rejecting yourself just to soften the impact in case they do it first. You apologize before being questioned, confess before being accused, bleed before being asked if you're okay. You think you're being brave, but what you're really doing is surviving. Because if you tell them everything up front, maybe they'll have less to use against you. Maybe they'll love you for your mess instead of punishing you because of it. But they never do. Not fully, not safely. They love the version of you that hurts just enough to be interesting, but not so much that it demands responsibility. So you keep talking. Keep softening your truth. Keep breaking it down into pieces that are easier to swallow. Until one day, you realize you're no longer being honest. You're just rehearsing pain for approval. Machiavelli wasn't against truth. He was against surrender. He knew that in the wrong context, truth isn't healing. It's ammunition. Because when you give people the full map to your soul, you don't just invite empathy. You invite strategy. You invite control. You invite attack. And sometimes you won't even realize it until it's too late, until your words come back to haunt you, until your past becomes your label, until your openness becomes your cage. We all want to be understood. But if being understood means being used, if it means being unarmed in a room full of hunters, if it means trading your safety for the illusion of closeness, then maybe silence isn't avoidance. Maybe silence is wisdom. Because not every truth needs to be told. Not to everyone, not all the time, and not at the cost of your soul.
This is not a video about honesty. It's a confrontation with the parts of you that confuse transparency with love, that confuse openness with worth, that confuse being seen with being safe. You were taught that truth makes you free, but they never told you that freedom without protection becomes exposure, and exposure in the wrong hands becomes execution. So maybe the lesson isn't to stop telling the truth. Maybe it's to stop offering it to those who've never bled for theirs. You don't owe the world a version of you they can dissect. You don't need to be understood by people who only want to understand how to control you. Silence is not a weakness. It's not a wall. It's a sacred boundary for the parts of you that are still healing. And if they call you distant, good. Let them wonder. Let them fill the silence with their own projections. Because that's the thing about mystery. It protects what matters. And maybe that's the real truth worth telling. Not with words, but with distance, with precision, with power. And one day someone will ask why you don't open up so easily anymore. They'll say you've changed, that you've become colder, harder, quieter. And they'll be right, because pain rewires the way you speak. It makes you slower with your words, sharper with your intuition, and far more careful with your confessions. You don't owe your softness to those who treated it like convenience. You don't owe your truth to those who only listened to twist it. And you sure as hell don't owe your past to people who never earned your future. So if you're quieter now, let it be your shield. If you're more selective, let it be your wisdom. Because silence doesn't mean there's nothing left to say. It means there's nothing left to prove. If this moved something inside you, stay. We're building something for those who don't fake it. Subscribe not just for the content, but for the confrontation. And if this left a wound, maybe it was meant to. Sometimes the best way to go deeper is to share the pain. Share it. Someone out there still believes that honesty will save them, still thinks being fully seen means being fully safe, still calls overexposure courage. This won't teach them to lie, but it might teach them to protect the truth, to guard what's sacred, to speak only when the silence is ready to hold them. Let this reach them. Let it be the mirror, the one that doesn't flatter, but warns.